Welcome back to the Raising Rock podcast. I am Elise and I am your host. Before I get into the episode today, I do want to let you know that this is not an episode appropriate for children. So if you have little ones in the room or the car, I'm going to buy us some time, mute me, pause the episode, put your ear pods in. Okay, you should have had enough time to do that by now. Today's episode is all about pornography. It is time to talk to your kids about porn. That is the title of Greta Eskridge's new book. It's time to talk to your kids about porn. And guys, it is time. Our kids will be exposed to porn at some point in their childhood. Greta shared some jaw-dropping statistics with me. Boys have a 92% chance of being exposed to porn by the time they're 18, and girls have a 67% chance of being exposed to porn by the time they're 18. So this is not just a topic that is kind of important that we be aware of. Her book is so appropriately titled, It is Time to Talk to Your Kids About Porn. This episode is so practical and filled with so many word tracks, conversations, scripts that you can pull directly from Greta and use with your own children. So I would encourage you to pull out some notes, have your phone handy where you can take notes, but you need to capture this episode because it will really impact your ability to have this conversation with your children. And newsflash, you're going to need to have it sooner than you thought you did. So we get into all of that with Greta. She is a wealth of information. She's so enjoyable to talk to. I think you're really going to like this episode, even though it's a tough topic. Like I always do, I'm going to be a broken record. Pause this episode, like, follow, subscribe to wherever you're listening to this podcast, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Every time you engage with us and the podcast, it helps us become more discoverable to a new audience. And while you're at it, go to Instagram, like our most recent post, save it, share it with some friends. Every time you do that, it also helps us become more discoverable to new followers, which just helps us grow and spread this message and this mission. So with that, Greta Eskridge, welcome to the Raising Rock podcast. Most parents are just hoping their kids don't stumble across porn before they've had a conversation with them. Why is that not the best approach? Why is hope not a strategy when it comes to pornography?
Oh man, I wish it was. I wish we could just be like, yeah, it's never going to happen, or they're going to be much older and we will surely have talked about it. But statistically speaking, the average age of first-time exposure is between the ages of 8 and 11. Most often it's an accidental thing. Someone showed your kid, someone on the bus at sports practice, an older, sibling that while they were at their friend's house, or they were like playing a game and they clicked a pop-up ad and it led them down a rabbit hole to pornography, or they were Googling, like I want to draw a picture of Princess Jasmine, and suddenly they are, confronted with explicit images that they were not expecting. And so if we know that that's happening to kids at such a young age, and we know statistically as well that by the age of 18, I think it's 92% of boys will have been exposed to pornography and 67% of girls will have been exposed to pornography. We know that hope is not going to be enough to pull us through. Our kids are being targeted by the porn industry at a younger and younger age. And so that means we as parents have to step into the battle and talk to them about it.
92% of boys will have been exposed to porn by the time they turn. I mean, that's basically like you can just say, my child will be exposed to porn at some point.
Yes.
Wild.
And that's heavy.
It's so heavy. It's
hard.
And I feel like I know this, but then to be faced with that surety of like, statistically speaking, my two boys will be exposed to it is really kind of hard to stomach and hard to wrestle with.
Yes, it is.
So what are some sneaky ways that porn gets in front of our children? You mentioned a few already, a pop-up ad on a game, Googling Princess Jasmine. What are some things that parents should be really aware of that porn can sneak in and expose our children?
Video games are another one because video games, number one, there's often highly sexualized content. So it's already desensitizing them to viewing women typically, but also it could be men as sexualized objects rather than as human beings. But then also video games are now, there are so many that are multiplayer, and that means your child is playing that video game with a stranger. And you don't know if that stranger is 12 like them or 37, and who will say, hey, why don't you look at this? I'm going to message you. You're so good at this game. I have some tips I want to share with you. And suddenly they're sending your child explicit material through that video game, or asking your child to send them nude pictures, which then brings up another way that kids are exposed to pornography. So many girls now are sent pictures by a guy at school, somebody who got their number. Sometimes it goes out to everybody in the class. Sometimes it could go out to everybody on a plane. I was on a plane recently and got a notification because I hadn't changed my settings on my phone to say that I wouldn't accept texts or photos from strangers. I hadn't changed that setting. And suddenly my phone lights up and there's a picture. It doesn't show the picture unless I click on the text. But the girl sitting next to me also got it. And I was like, this is weird. And I see lots of women on the plane looking around. And somebody's probably, I didn't click on it because why would I run that risk? But sending out pictures to all the women on the plane.
Wait,
and that could happen to your daughter in high school.
Wait.
This is a real thing. It really happens.
Are we talking about airdropping, like the feature where you can?
Yes, okay, airdropping.
I did notice. It's really funny that you mentioned that. I noticed that lately, that if you go to airdrop someone that you're not a contact with, like you're not a shared contact, it asks for a code. Like there's now a built. So I wonder if that is why is people were sending unwanted.
Yes, they were, and they do. For teenagers and even middle schoolers, it's not even like we're going to airdrop it. It's like, hey, I got your number from somebody and I'm sending you this picture of myself. And that is a very common thing that girls are having to deal with. So, and that is considered child pornography, or asking like, hey, can you send me a nude? And that is absolutely becoming normalized amongst teenagers and middle schoolers. So they're not just experiencing it by like, oh, I accidentally, Googled something and something came up. It could actually be from a classmate. It is so becoming such a normalized part of our society and the world our kids are growing up in, that if we don't address it with them, we are not just doing them a disservice. We are actually allowing them to be exposed to dangerous things, and we're not stepping in.
Wow. Are there different ages that we should be aware of different technologies? So I have a 6-year-old and I have a 9-year-old. Is there a difference between what my 6-year-old would see and what I should be aware of versus what maybe my 9-year-old, or maybe what a friend's 12-year-old or 15-year-old? Like, are there different, I guess what I'm saying, are there different platforms or different things based on age that parents need to like kind of tuck this in the back of your head, be watchful, be discerning about your child based on their age?
Well, I would say like 10 and under, the elementary school years, they're probably less likely to be exposed to explicit content purposefully. That's more common. Like it's accidental exposure. Like some of the things I talked about, they're playing a video game on a tablet and, there's a pop-up ad and they don't know like, oh, this looks fun. And they click on it. They don't realize like that it could take them down a road to a place they don't want to go to. It's when our kids get older that then they're going to be, the older they get, the more chances there are of them being exposed to explicit material in a variety of places, whether that's from someone sending them something or them like being curious and Googling something. So I would say that there need to be conversations across the board, starting when our kids are in elementary school. We shouldn't just say, well, they probably won't be exposed because I have parental controls on screens in the house. We should give them a plan for what to do when they are exposed, because we don't want to be reactive in our parenting. We want to be proactive. And by being proactive, that means we give our kids a plan before they're exposed to pornography. And that would be, those conversations would be happening in elementary school. But by middle school and high school, you absolutely must have those conversations with your kids, because if they haven't seen it themselves, other people have, other people are talking about it. They're at least hearing about it, and they need to know what to do too. They need to know they don't have to participate. They need to know, to walk away, to stay safe.
Are there sneaky platforms? I heard you recently, the reason I'm asking this is I heard you recently talk about Temu and people finding pornography on Temu. Are there other places that a parent would be totally unsuspecting? Like, I know to look for it in video games. I know to look for it in pop-up ads. Like, that is a good reminder, but it's not like an earth-shattering, groundbreaking thing. I think most parents would assume that, yes, we know video games have a risk, but I heard Temu and I was like, what? Like, the place where like little girls are shopping for like bedazzled headbands? What?
I think that a place like Temu or Amazon, where a kid is like shopping, they can find soft porn for sure through something like lingerie, pictures, or, they're searching, like it could be they're looking for a movie poster and suddenly the posters are turning extremely erotic, and it can be soft porn. So yes, places like that might not be like more hardcore pornography, but it's the place where the appetite is, begins, right? But then there are other things, like your child could find pornography on Spotify, because there are podcasts, and there's audio pornography through books, like we talked about earlier on my podcast, at least. Like that could actually be a place where they find pornography that isn't pictures, but it's still absolutely pornography. So what is your child listening to? Books. I just, whether they're listening to the book or they're reading the book, that one surprises parents a lot. They're like, what? I have to worry about what my kid reads. Yes, you do, especially your daughters. A Pinterest, that's another one.
I was going to ask you, I would think, because I don't have daughters, but I would not think twice about letting my daughter go on Pinterest and look at cute pins and cute outfits. Like, I wouldn't even think twice about it.
Yeah. And it's not just, it's not even just pornography is a danger. I just had a conversation with my daughter about Pinterest. And like the algorithm feeding her stuff that's like a particular body type for girls, like super skinny, and that algorithm being fed. And I was like, have you noticed that? Have you noticed that you're seeing girls and promoting diets and promoting, some certain kind of drink that you can drink to get super skinny, and the clothes that they're suggesting you wear are girls who have no figures? And I was like, have you noticed that? And she's like, yeah, I do. I have noticed it. And I was like, there's a reason you're being fed that. Well, the same way the algorithm can feed hypersexualized images to your kid who's on Pinterest or Amazon or any other thing, that they're thinking, I just want to look for cute clothes or fun stuff for my room. And lo and behold, they're fed something that's entirely different.
My older son, my 9-year-old Luke, he got a 3D printer for Christmas. And there's an app that you can download where you can like search images of what you'd want to build. And it's like all pre-coded, and you just hit print and the 3D printer goes and prints. And I've just had this check in my spirit about giving him unlimited access to that app. I haven't seen anything that is alarming, but I'm like, there's got to be somebody twisted out there that's uploaded something explicit that you could like 3D print. And yeah, I don't know. I hope not, but I have been really careful about that, because I'm like, there are just so many sneaky ways that the devil gets pornography in front of children. Like, you cannot be too careful.
And then, like I said, it awakens a sexual appetite before a kid is ready. Before there's because our sexuality and the sexual parts of who we are not bad. They're God-given, right? He created us as sexual beings. But the thing that Satan does is he twists it and he distorts it and he turns it into the antithesis of God's plan. So instead of being awakened as a sexual being, on God's timeline, 8 years old, that is not okay. That is not the plan. It's actually bad and dangerous. But that's what Satan wants to do by exposing kids to pornography at younger and younger ages and creating an appetite that they don't even understand themselves. They don't have any clue what's going on. They just know that their body is responding as is that it's created to do because it's biological, but they don't understand. And then things like shame and self-hatred and things creep into this place that should be something about safety and beauty and God's design for goodness between a husband and wife. And instead, Satan has just warped it into something that is not safe. It's scary and it's sad.
What does the conversation with children look like by age? And maybe it's elementary, middle school, high school, but how do you break up that age appropriate conversation? When do you start the conversations and what do they look like?
Well, this is always the question that parents are like dying to know the answer to. And then when I tell them, they're like, oh, I don't feel ready. Because my suggestion is you talk to your kids as young as 6, 7, 8 years old, because again, we want to be proactive. We want to give them a plan for what to do if they see pornography. And if the chances of them being exposed are from 8 to 11 for the first time, we need to speak to them before then. But I just want to reassure everyone listening, it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be difficult. And you're not giving them a lot of information at that age. I always say you give them the least amount of information to stay the most safe. And so a sample conversation with your 7 or 8-year-old would be something like this. Sweetheart, I need to tell you about something called pornography. Pornography is dangerous and it's not good for you. It's my job to keep you safe from things that are dangerous. So I want you to know what to do if you ever see it. Pornography is pictures or movies of people who don't have clothes on, and we can see their private parts. And we know that we don't think that's okay because private parts are worthy of respect and protection. And so if you ever see pictures or movies like that on a screen, if someone shows them to you or you see them when you're playing on my phone or the computer, here's what I want you to do. I want you to turn the phone over, close the computer, or walk away from that person. And I want you to say, I don't want to look at that. And then I want you to come find me or daddy or somebody else that's safe and say, I think I saw pornography. Will you help me? And we will help you. We will be so glad that you came and told us what happened because we want to help you be safe from that thing that you saw that is not good for you and that actually is dangerous. It's our job to keep you safe. And that conversation is so short and it is not scary for the kid. You're just saying, hey, I want to keep you safe. And if you see this thing, here's what you do. You give them a plan of action. There's no shame. There's no fear. Instead, you've equipped them to be able to be proactive in what could potentially be a much scarier situation if you didn't give them those tools.
So good. Does it evolve as the child's older? I've had a very similar conversation with both of my boys. They're 6 and almost 9. My 6-year-old's heard it because his 9-year-old older brother,
right,
we talk about it with him. It sounds very similar to what you shared. We talk about, private parts are not meant to be shown to other people. It's for your wife someday, because we've had the sex conversations. We've talked about like your body is for your wife someday. And so when we talk about it, it's like, okay, who's allowed to see your private parts? And then it leads to, okay, well then why would they be on a screen? And that's kind of how we've been able to go through it with them. So they're fairly familiar. But as they get older, how does the conversation evolve to equipping them more to be on guard?
Well, if you've never had the conversation in your child's in middle school or high school, I think it starts with honesty by you saying, hey, I should have talked to you about this before now, but I didn't know how to, or I was afraid or uncomfortable, but I'm going to now. And then saying something like, I need to talk to you about pornography. You have probably heard about pornography from someone, or just heard the word, or maybe you've even seen it before. And I want you to know that I am here to help you. And I want you to know what I believe about pornography. And I want you to know what to do if you see it for the first time or if you see it again, because it's not good for you. It's not good for the people who are creating it or anyone who's using it. And I want you to be safe. And being really honest like that is helpful. It does not mean your teen is going to be like, oh, yay, mom, I'm so glad you're finally having this conversation with me. They're probably going to feel uncomfortable, maybe even embarrassed. They're definitely it's going to be awkward. But by you being honest and saying, I should have talked to you about it sooner. I recognize you've probably heard this. You maybe even have seen it, but I want to help. And I want to let you know categorically, you don't have to use pornography, because so many teens have not been talked to about pornography. And many of them have said, I didn't know that I didn't have to use it. I didn't know that it was bad. And so when you give your kids the truth in the teen years, and even the middle school years, you are giving them a countercultural message, because the culture that they are growing up in says porn is no big deal. Everybody uses it. It's funny. It's totally normal. And you are saying, actually, no, I want to tell you the truth. If you have had that conversation with your kids when they're little and you've already told them that pornography is not good for them, what to do if they see it, then your conversation looks a little different. It's more of a revisit, like you said. It's like, hey, remember when we talked about porn, 6 months ago or a year ago? Well, you're a little older now, and there's a chance that you could come in contact with it in the locker room or on the bus on the way to soccer games or whatever the scenario is. And I want to remind you, the same things that I told you when you were little still apply today. You can choose to not look at it, to walk away, and especially to come talk to me, because you want to maintain those open lines of communication as they get older.
Are there any practical apps or subscriptions or things that we can do as parents to block and filter out some of this from even reaching our children?
There are things that are helpful. Things like this is especially for younger kids, having a router in your house, because that can filter out explicit images before it even gets onto screens. But once your kids are out of the house and on their own screens, then that router doesn't matter anymore. So that's really good, though, for kids when they're younger and they're mostly using screens at home. As they get older, there are things you can do. You can, enable the parental control stuff on phones or computers, tablets. You can make sure for like Google, you can enact where it's like safe images. So it's less likely that explicit images are going to get through. There are apps there's an app called Canopy, which will
I use
help.
Canopy. I love Canopy.
There you go. That it will help reduce the chances of explicit images coming through like Google searches or blogs. But here's the caveat on those things, like Canopy. It works really great on Google or blogs or websites. But in apps like Instagram or TikTok or whatever other millions of apps are out there, the parental controls and software like Canopy, it doesn't work in apps. And that's the problem, because so many teens are using apps and you can't block the explicit material that's coming through there. Your child could have a teen account on Instagram or on TikTok, but if someone sends them a private message, they could still open that message, and whatever that person sent to them they're able to see it if they choose to open it. So that is why I always defer to conversation, because yes, you as a parent should be aware of what your kids are using. You should enact parental controls on their devices, and you should use things like Canopy and other, Bark is another one that's great at helping filter out the bad things that our kids could be exposed to. But kids will and do find ways around things. But even more, the porn industry is going to find ways around all of these things and come after your kids. So you as a parent need to be in constant communication with your kids about these things. That's why the title of my book is It's Time to Talk to Your Kids About Porn. It's not it's time to put parental control locks on your kids' screens. It's actually time to talk to your kids, because that conversation is what really provides the best layer of protection for our kids.
It's so true. I mean, we use Canopy. My kids are young, so it's really on their like Chromebook that they have through the charter that we use, or if we're traveling, they don't get iPads at home, but they do get them if we're traveling. And so I have protections built in for that, but they're really not interacting with technology much outside of those parameters. And I have them like on lockdown, but I've still chosen to talk to them about it from a very early age because it's everywhere. The first time my son, and we had talked to him about sex, and so I don't think much damage was done in the conversation, but he was at a birthday party. So let me do the math. It would have been a friend's 8th birthday party. And there was a little boy there who was 8, but had an older sister. And the little boy went to my son and said, "My sister loves to look at pictures of naked people on the internet." So my son,
it can be so simple, like
so
that.
simple. And my son didn't see anything. He didn't really understand it, but we'd had the sex conversation. So he knew that private parts were private and meant for his wife someday. So something just it didn't settle right in his spirit. And so he brought it to us, and I was like inside wanting to scream, but I was just so calm. And I was like, "Oh, wow. Well, what do you think of that?" And he's like, "Well, it just didn't seem right. Like, those are private." I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." And then that led to conversations, and we've regularly, not super regularly, it's not an everyday conversation, but we've fairly regularly continued the conversation about pornography. And now my younger son's heard it, so he's a little more aware. But yeah, and it came up the other day again in the most bizarre way. My boys play Little League, and we have Little League practice at like a public park. And so there's like a public bathroom there. And there were like all these texts coming out from moms. And eventually Little League had to send out an announcement that there were homeless men taking showers in the sink of the bathroom, and just no kids can be going in the bathroom alone. And my son's first question was, "Well, how did they know this was happening? Was someone like taking a picture of it?" And I use that as an opportunity to say, "Well, no one took a picture of it. Someone walked in on it. But why wouldn't we take a picture of that? Why would a picture not be taken?" And both of them, even my youngest, said, "Well, because the person was naked. You can't take a picture of someone naked." And so
good job, Mom.
well, no, I don't say that for a good job, but like there's fruit in us regularly talking about it. And I need to up my game to now, okay, they're aware of it. They know why it's wrong. They know why we don't do it. But I do need to really emphasize that when it happens, because it will, come to me and Dad. We're your first line of defense. Like we've said that, but I need to continue to really up my game on that.
But I just love that they knew that they could talk to you about it. Like the first thing, that when the birthday party and the kid that said that to him, like, your son knew he could tell you. And that right there is so critical. You know, when they're little, even like we're like, "Oh yeah, my little kid, he tells me everything." It's when they get to high school, I have to worry. But no, there are so many kids, if they have an uncomfortable conversation like that, or they actually see something, they might not feel comfortable sharing that with mom or dad. And that's when the shame begins to creep in, and the hiding, and the curiosity. Whereas what you explain in both of those situations is your child is like, "I feel comfortable. I'm not hiding. I'm not in shame." And that is so valuable, because that's the kind of relationship we want to cultivate with our kids, that they know they can come to us and ask us questions, and or say, "This is what happened and I don't know what to do with it." that starts when our kids are little, and then we, cultivate it as they grow up, because it will get harder and more uncomfortable, and there will be more challenging circumstances as they get older, but the training ground is when they're little.
Absolutely. Do you have any advice for the mom listening who has suspicion that a child in a friend group, or maybe their own home or in a friend group, is struggling with pornography, or is looking at pornography? Maybe it's not a struggle yet, but is looking at it, how to approach that? Probably not as much in our own home, because we've talked a lot about in our own home, like what those conversations look like. But if there's a suspicion that there's somebody in the friend group that could have an impact on your own child, how do you navigate the really murky waters with this friend has a problem? How do you cut off the relationship? Like, how do you nurture that environment?
I think you might be the first person who's ever asked that. And it is a hard one, because, no, like, if you were to say, like, oh, I'll go talk to the mom, like, imagine the the anger or the heartbreak, the discomfort that mom would feel. But I think you do have to be really honest about the protection, not just of your own kids, but for that kid as well. Because that's for me the bottom line. That's why I am in this work, is because I care about kids. I care about keeping kids safe from porn, but I also care about kids who are using porn, because they deserve better. All of our kids do. And so if that's our approach, it's like, okay, well, I care about this child. I'm worried about what they've been exposed to or are being exposed to right now. How can I help them? I don't have like a script for that. I would say possibly if you don't have concrete evidence, then maybe the best thing to do would be to start the conversation with the mom by saying, hey, I just listened to this podcast episode and they were talking about kids using pornography. And I was wondering, like, what do you guys do in your home to keep, your kids safe? Like, I'm just asking everyone. And that might be the way that you start the conversation, opening it up. So maybe if she also has suspicion, she feels like, oh, okay, I can talk to her. Or maybe that's the spark that will get her to think like, okay, I need to look into this. That's totally different than if you have, like I said, concrete evidence, that this child has used pornography, has shown your kid or some other kids. Then you actually have to be like, address it. This is not safe. And I want to get help for your son or daughter who's using it. I have resources, and then again, like, be equipped as a parent. Like, what are the resources? Find out some books that you can recommend, podcast episodes, so that you're not just saying, hey, I know your kid did this, you better fix it, but to come at them with compassion and grace and resources. Because let me tell you, a parent who's discovering their child is using pornography, it is a very lonely place to be. And if they feel like everyone's judging them and hates their kid or doesn't trust their kid, they're probably going to isolate and pull back more. So to approach them with grace and compassion and say, I want to help, here are some resources I've just learned about, that can be a really potentially much more helpful and powerful conversation than just to be like, I'm mad at what your kid did.
Absolutely. Okay, give us the Eskridge family playbook. I know you're talking to your kids young about pornography, but what other things are you doing? Were your kids allowed to have phones at an early age? Are they allowed to have social media? Do they play video games? Like, are there guardrails? Like, give us the Eskridge playbook.
Well, I will say that part of the reason I wrote the book, It's Time to Talk to Your Kids About Porn, the reason I talk about this is because there are things that I wish we would have had when our kids were younger. There are things I wish we would have done differently. And so we wanted to help other parents do things that either we didn't do or that we didn't know about and wished we could have done. We were pretty particular about our kids getting phones. We wanted them to wait until they were like really necessary for their life. And so that meant like 16, 17, or 18 years old before they're getting phones and smartphones connected to the internet. Before that, they had safe phones. We used Gab because that was at the start, that was one of the only companies out there. There are now so many companies making smartphone or safe phones for kids, which are phones that talk and text. They have a screen. It's not like the old fashioned where you had to like press the button 3 times, like beep, beep, beep. And you're like, oh, dang it. I did the wrong one. They like have a screen. You can text easily, but they're not connected to the internet. So your kid isn't, able to download apps and get on Google and all those things. So I say use safe phones for as long as possible. And then when your kid really needs a phone, whether for driving or for jobs or whatever the reason is, then get them a smartphone, but delay as long as possible. I would say the same for social media. I'm a pretty big proponent and staunch advocate of delaying social media until really like after high school is my goal. That is hard. But I think that kids and social media it's just a dangerous combination, and it's not the kid's fault. It's just what's on there. What are they exposed to? Who's speaking into their life? What can they accidentally find? And so waiting for social media as long as possible and giving them training in it, not just being like, okay, you're 13, you get social media now, or you're 15, you get it. Happy 16th birthday, you get social media. But giving them training for it to learn how to use it well and wisely. We don't do multiplayer video games, so our boys have liked video games in some capacity through the years, but definitely no playing with strangers. I don't even want them to play like with a friend in, another house. Like if you want to play a video game with your friend, you can do it together side by side, but we're not going to engage in the multiplayer games because I just don't know who's on the other side. So those are some of the things that we have done in our house that are probably a little countercultural, but it's not been a complete lockdown, but definitely at a slower pace than what traditional culture just says is okay.
And where did your passion from talking about pornography come from? There has to be a story somewhere, because I see you on Instagram. I was on your podcast, and your last question to me was, I love chasing joy. So pornography is a hard pivot from chasing joy, be outside, homeschool, pornography. So tell me where this passion for talking about pornography has come from, because it is a pretty harsh pivot from some of the other things you are passionate about talking about.
Yeah, I am every person who's trying to create a brand and their worst nightmare, because it's like, wait, adventure, nature, books, porn. But my passion for fighting porn came from a place of pain. Probably 16 years ago or so, my husband came to me, confessed to having a pornography addiction, which contributed to him having an affair. And it absolutely rocked our world. It rocked our marriage. And it rocked me because, everything I thought to be true about him, about us, about myself felt like a lie. And so as we worked through restoration and healing and repair, as individuals and then as a couple, I was really wanting to do something positive with this, most painful thing that I had ever experienced and would have never imagined happening in our lives. And so I began to share, just like with my friend group, the things that I was learning about keeping kids safe from pornography, because a big part of Aaron and I's story is that neither of us had any like training or knowledge of how to deal with this. Our parents, we love them, appreciate and admire them, but they did not have tools to teach us as kids how to talk about pornography. Nobody was talking about this when we were growing up. And so they didn't have tools. Therefore, we didn't have tools. And the fallout from that was immense. And so we're like, well, how can we do different for our kids? And then it just kind of became, how can we do different for kids everywhere? And so that became our fight. And, for a long time, I was in the forefront and Aaron was behind, helping in the background, but he has started to, help men specifically, but now we're talking to couples because we recognize it's not just kids who are being impacted by pornography, it's marriages, it's individuals. We want to be on the front lines to bring light into a dark place.
Wow, you are really the living proof of taking what the enemy meant for harm and making a beautiful situation out of it with the Lord's help. I mean, it really is so incredible, the work that you guys are doing and how you're helping families. And it's like, I wish that there was a way to quantify all these little conversations that you're equipping parents to have, how many lives that saves from a life of destruction because of pornography. Like, I wish there was a way to quantify it, because it would be so cool to see how your footprint is really impacting lives.
Well, I hope that that is absolutely the case. And I believe it is in a way, because I hear from people who are like, oh, I had this conversation because I heard you on a podcast, or I read your book, or I saw your Instagram post. And that's what we've wanted all along. My friend said to me in the very early days of after disclosure, she said, remember the story of Joseph and how, he was betrayed by his brothers, and God said, the enemy meant this for evil, but I meant it for good. And that has been my prayer from the beginning. And that's what having a conversation like this with you being, willing to open up your podcast to have these uncomfortable conversations. That's where the change happens, and we get to be a part of it. And that's pretty incredible.
And with that story about Joseph, none of that was a surprise to God. What you walked through with your husband wasn't a surprise to God. God knew. Doesn't mean it doesn't break his heart when it happens, but he's so sovereign and none of it's a surprise to him. So when it does happen, he can make such good out of it if we get out of our own way and let him do that. And you guys have just done such an incredible job with that. So with that, where can the audience find you? Tell us, you have 2 books. Tell us the names of both of them, where we can find you, where we can listen to you, your podcast, your author, your all the things. So tell us all the ways that we can connect with you.
Yeah, I have. So all my books are on, I have 3 actually. That's okay. I can't even remember all of them. So in fact, if you were to ask me the subtitles of my books, I'd be like, I don't even know. I can't remember right now. So you can find them all on Amazon or at Barnes and Noble, anywhere books are sold. They're in your library. A lot of, they're on Audible. So you can find my books. My latest is It's Time to Talk to Your Kids About Porn. And then my first book, hard pivot again, is Adventuring Together. And that's about creating connection with your kids through adventure. So really my heart and soul, my message is all about connection and relationship. Porn robs us of that. And then how can we as parents pursue that intentionally? And then I have a podcast, the Greta Eskridge podcast, website, gretaeskridge.com. And I'm most active on Instagram. I'm not on other social media because I have neither the time nor the desire to be on them. So find me on Instagram at Greta Eskridge and come hang out. I love to talk about all kinds of things. My husband's favorite joke is he will always tell men when he's speaking, he'll be like, hey, if you see a guy talking to me, we're not just talking about porn. I like other things too. I'll talk about Land Cruisers and hiking. And so I always say, come hang out with me. Yes, I will talk about fighting porn, but I will also talk about hiking and, my favorite homemade popcorn recipe and what great lipstick I have or whatever. I like to talk about all kinds of things. So come hang out with me. It's a good time, I promise.
I love it. Well, I've loved following you over the years. It's been so great to see your message come to life and hear all that you're talking about. So I've enjoyed following you, and I'm sure others that are going to be new to your audience will love it too. So I end every episode with this question, and I'll ask it of you. At Raising Rock, we have 4 core values: respect, obedience, courage, and kindness. The 4 values that I hope to first have and then be equipped to pass on to my children. Which of those values stands out to you, and how can you encourage moms today to either embrace it themselves or help teach it to their children?
I would say obedience, because I have spent the last 16 years walking in obedience to the Lord, sharing this message and then writing a book, which I prayed for 15 years to come, for the Lord to open the door. And obedience is hard work, but I think as moms, if we can practice obedience in our own life to the Lord, walking in obedience to Him, and model that for our kids, and then show them that while obedience is hard, the fruit of obedience is so good. And it's not super sexy. It's just not like, oh yeah, obedience. Woo, I love it. Like it is a challenge. And yet the fruit of it is so worthwhile. So, I think as parents, if we can model obedience in our own life and share that with our kids, that is an incredibly powerful thing to pass on to them.
I love it. Greta, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Raising Rock podcast. It's been such a joy.
Thank you for having me. I really love talking to you.